everyone, and welcome to Let's Build Your Dumpster Fire. I am one of your hosts, Brian. Fortunately, only one of me this week, here with Danielle and Matthew. And today we're going to be talking about integrations, but not integrations the way you think it is. More on the topic of why integrations are kind of going down a dangerous rabbit hole that's driving us and probably everyone else very crazy. So, Matthew, I know you were going on an anecdote about this just before we hopped on. Care to continue?
Yes. So, as someone who builds things a lot, I think we all can agree that like a lot of people use Slack. And this is not like, and I mean, some people use Slack. Some of us are forced to use Teams, and I'm sorry for you and if you have to use Teams.
My
But
condolences.
yeah, my condolences as well. But like a tool like Slack is great because it's designed to remove the need for like it's supposed to replace email, which a lot of people seem to forget that that's a thing. But like you should be using. I feel really strongly that like you should not. If you're using Slack, why are you still sending emails anyway? Internally, externally that's different, but internally, like, do you really need to have emails? Um, that being said, like Slack is great, and like you'll often use it to show like updates and information. You're like, oh, hey, here's my information about like this deal closed one. And some leaders like, hey, I want to get a notification every time a deal's closed one. You're like, cool. So I go into HubSpot and I create a notification that says send to Slack, and it goes to channel. And the nice thing about the HubSpot integration with Slack is like I have essentially a giant box that I can put whatever the hell I want in it. I can format it however I want. I can put formatting that Slack will recognize. I can make it put in, you know, very specific fields from the deal, from associated records. Like I can give them all information you do. I can put some funny emoji in a cool tagline. If anyone's worked with me knows that that's my thing. Is usually like all my Slack notifications start like Yahoo, like they're really unhinged.
Hmm.
But then people know exactly which Slack notification it is.
Today I learned
So
that Matthew's excited vocabulary is that of a 90-year-old.
it is. There was a point where I had so many in one company that I had to like I was like running out of options. So it just got more and
Ooh.
more unhinged as I went.
I heard you
I
say
was like,
gobbledygook today, which I've only
yeah,
ever heard out of my 85-year-old grandmother. So,
flim flam rope a dope
Perfection.
is another one. This is all held together by flim flam and rope a dope. The that being said though, like the nice thing about those notifications is you can give as much context as you need to without having to go back into HubSpot. And there's a button there you can click that takes you back into HubSpot. There's also a button now that summarizes with Copilot that's completely unnecessary in a different conversation for a different day. The because I have feelings about that too.
Hmm.
But that's an implication of like how I expect an integration to work in HubSpot. Could it be better? Yes. Could I be able to like make you make decisions on a deal? That'd be awesome. Like if I could send like something from HubSpot to Slack that says this needs approval, and there's a button you could click in Slack to approve the thing, that would be wonderful. I
Hmm.
know that's going to require a bit more work on like HubSpot's part, but like the functionality is there because like Slack block code exists and you can do that. And I've seen it work with other companies, but like that's where it gets. But there's integrations that are terrible. I'm not going to name any names, but Asana is like one of them. Like I have to click into a task and then it like opens a window that then opens my desktop app, and that really irritates me. Someone else, please talk now.
Yeah, and like I would say it's the same thing for like any of the project management tools because like we were talking about this with like having experiences with ClickUp and Monday.com and honestly even Jira too. It's just like you set up the integration with Slack or with HubSpot or whatever. You're basically it's just it's a glorified RSS feed. That's all it is. You still need to actually go into the app itself in order to do anything, which almost defeats the whole purpose. Like if I'm setting up an take for example stand-ups. Like Danielle and I, we want to just have a simple stand-up that's basically in Slack that just says, "What are you working on today?" It shows us the task that we're using in ClickUp. We choose the ones we're working on, and then it basically just creates a task in ClickUp that has associated properties. Not associated properties, the associated tasks. That's easy to do. You can create that in 2 seconds manually in ClickUp. Why can't I create that in the Slack integration? Why do I need to go into ClickUp to do that? And if I do set up the integration to basically do that, all it does is say, hey, you created this new task. Check it out. And then you have to click into it in order to see literally anything you have to do. And it's just
I feel like this is a failing of Slack apps because so my name and shame today is Doc. One of my clients just started using it, and I was like, "This seems pretty cool." It's like a sales room type thing, and so their marketing team, who I'm working with, is looking to do a lot of enablement and pushing their assets into there for the sales team to use in their sales rooms. Super cool. They want to
Hmm.
measure the effectiveness and the views on those assets. HubSpot's visibility into doc and integration is odd. Like you
Do
have
do
the
tell.
they have the right hand column. You know how like every app you get adds another box to the right hand column, so it just
Yeah.
endlessly scrolls. So that's at the bottom, and you can click. There's a single button that says like create workspace, and you click that, and it opens up basically an iframed version of Doc
Sweet.
inside of HubSpot. I'm like, all right, cool. We're
Sweet.
not leaving the window, but still, you have to like log in, make sure it works, and then you're
Yeah.
still somewhat limited in what you can do. But the weird thing is when I'm looking at it from the marketing side of things and trying to measure the effectiveness of the assets, like I know it's collecting that data in Doc. I can't embed the reports back into a dashboard. Fine. But you can kind of see the activity in some places but not others. So like I could not build a report on doc views. I can reference them in scoring. I can
Hmm.
reference them in lists and I can reference them in workflows. But it's like hidden and they're not actually properties. It's kind of like Zoom where you have like the
Oh, it's
extra
activity.
thing.
It's
Yeah,
marked as activity. Yeah.
so like it's there, but it's also like an app, so it's not a full activity in the same way that Zoom is. So like you can reference it in some secret corners of HubSpot, but not in the way that I actually want to.
Which leads to like an over complex solution. And that's why like Make and Zapier have like taken off in the last
Hmm.
couple of years, is because like all these bloody integrations are just like, well, I have two tools that theoretically should talk to each other, but now they don't. So you need this third party tool that basically makes them talk to each other in a better way. But since you can't do it in the first two tools, you need to now adopt a fourth tool, which is where you're displaying these things. So that's how you're going to lead to a bloated tech stack, because using Danielle, like to your point of wanting to showcase that data, like if you have, what's the name of the tool again? I blanked on it.
Doc, like your document
Doc, but
notes.
you have Doc that's reporting this data. You want to see this in HubSpot, but you can't. Then you need to adopt like a Tableau or a Google Data Studio or a Looker or whatever have you, and then you need to plug in a Maker Zapier automation to basically make sure that both those sets of data are piping into your data visualization tool, so you can actually show the end user thing. And chances are that once you do that, your company's going to adopt another tool and one of those previous two is now obsolete, and then you continue to conflate this disaster.
I don't even think they have an integration with. I mean, they must with Zapier, but even when you're using something like Zapier or Make, you still have to be sure that the action is available to you. And
Right.
then if they don't have that, then you're talking about like APIs and,
Then
middleware
you
and
really need to know
warehouses.
JavaScript. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, you don't. Just ask
Oh,
ChatGPT.
yeah, right.
until it
Yeah.
all goes wrong and you can't figure out why.
Yeah,
No, it's
exactly.
always right. It just gives you, you give it a response, then it tells you to fix it. Then that fix is broken, so then you put that in and tell it to fix that. It just gives you the same response it gave you two asks ago, and you just go through the cycle over and over
Exactly.
and over again until you hit your limit on the free 4.0 model, and then push you down to the lower one, and it just stops working.
Yep.
I've done this a lot. Can you tell?
Oh, see, there you go. Perfect example of the overcomplexity. Now you need to adopt ChatGPT in order to basically do this solve that basically breaks it so much more. And then you get sick of ChatGPT and you're like, this doesn't work. I guess I need to adopt Claude now. And then you go in Claude and then that breaks it. And then next thing you know, you're now using Smartsheet in order to write a document about who knows what, and you don't even know why you're even here anymore. And the
I got
dumpster keeps
taken over
burning.
the telephone with Claude yesterday because
Ooh.
I was going through several iterations of the same document. It was a proposal that we were sending out. And Brian gave me the prompt, seemed pretty solid, but then we updated the template for what we wanted the end product to look like. And I fed that in as the next chat after we were like 3 or 4 versions deep. And it got so bad. I was like, all right, great. Now it's reformatted. And I pulled it into an actual Word document and started reading through it and was like, this is saying nothing. So I had to go back and just start with the original prompt and feed it the new template. And then it was great. But it was like it played telephone with itself too many times, got
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah, which we can go on a whole lesson prompt deep diving, which is basically this is why you should make sure your prompts don't get too long. Generally speaking, if you can't get to what you're doing after you've inputted 5 or 6 prompts yourself, you probably want to start a new chat, and
Right.
then um, just feed it the takeaway from your previous chat. Like we'll ignore that for right now.
I've generally found like if I mean most of my like chat GPT time has been like help me write a custom code workflow action. And
Hmm.
like the benefit is like you have to like, and I will say this, like anyone could do that using chat GPT. I will caveat that with like you do need to know some basic JavaScript,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
if you don't know basic JavaScript and you won't understand what's happening. And
And you don't know
B,
where to
because
put
I
it.
you don't know where to put it. And then secondly, like you won't understand like I anything I built ChatGPT, like I go through so like I understand it. Because I'm my attempt to using ChatGPT there is to be like, I want you to do the heavy lifting of like the basic building blocks and I will fuck around with it. Like, and then I'll get to where I want to go. Make sure, and now I have learned that, like, sometimes ChatGPT does a great job of when it's pulling, when you ask it to pull in the HubSpot API, which thankfully I've learned since HubSpot changed their API, like, website documentation website, it's doing a better job finding stuff there. So I don't know if that was
Really.
intentional on HubSpot's part, but I've noticed I'm getting there faster. I used to have, like, almost like tell it where to go look. I'm like, here's the
Hmm.
web page. It's here. Um,
It's SEO 2.0. It's like you have two
yeah.
versions of SEO: SEO for organic and SEO for bots. Keep going now.
And I like that I've seen like has made a huge improvement because like at least now, but what I've learned is I have to prompt them like often I'll say, hey, I want to do X, and this is just a rule for custom code workflow actions in general, is like they should do one thing. Do
Mhm.
not make them like stupid complicated because you'll kill yourself and you'll like be screaming and banging your head on the desk. Like don't be like,
Hmm.
I want it to pull this data and create a note and associate that note and do a thing.
Right.
Like, no, just do like have it pull the data. Now you have the data. See if you can use a standard workflow action to do the rest. Because I
Right.
spent way too much time trying to get like a custom code workflow action to like create a note on a custom object. And it was painful and I hated it. When I was like, there's a create note function, Matthew. And I was like, oh yeah. So I was like, well, let me just output it. And then I dumped it in the note. And I was like, oh look, now it's formatted and associated correctly. Yay.
One of my favorite hacks for getting code out of AI though is if you ask it to explain something in plain English. So if you're like really trying to learn JavaScript, you can be like, "Tell me what this code does in plain English," or "Tell me what these 3 lines are trying to accomplish in plain English," because then you can start to understand what it's trying to do and why it might be going wrong, and you can like explain it back in plain English and maybe get something that works. Don't hold your breath
Yep.
on that, but
That's actually a great tactic to bring up just for prompting in general, because when you ask it to do that, you're like, it's giving you effectively a prompt to start a new chat with. So a good way to validate that is basically take that plain English thing that it described to, start a new chat, paste that, see what the outcome is, cross compare, you can validate it.
yeah.
But again, rabbit holes. But
Remember
isn't
how we
that
were saying about integrations?
yeah, uh, yeah? But see, like that's I think going back to that original point, like just that like the various different tangent that we just took is like a very reasonable and applicable tangent that you will probably take when you're trying to set up an integration. You're going to go down and be completely talking about something else in a short period of time because, it's just the nature of I'm trying to fix the one thing. You find something in that one thing that's broken, and then you try and fix that, then you find something else that's broken, and then you're fixing the cautionary object, which somehow is relevant to the primary one, and you don't even remember the primary one is, and then what?
I feel
Yeah.
like you need your circle that can pull you out of that hole though, because
Mm-hmm.
it's usually at that point where I'm like, I've gotten so far into this, I'm not getting anywhere. I feel like I have to wipe the slate clean and start over. I go message one of you guys on Slack or Sarah, and I'm like, I got so far into this. How do I do this? And then someone is like, why would you even attempt that, you idiot? Like, here's how you don't do that.
I think the
Oh,
community to bring you up and be like, you're stupid. You should have done this instead. And you're like, wow, why didn't I think of that 3 hours ago?
Yeah. But hey, my
But it
clients
goes
thank
honestly,
you because then I'm not burning time on stupid things.
well. I think it talks that model of, like if you're gonna do anything custom in HubSpot, and this goes to, like anything, not even just custom code. Like go with like start with the bare minimum and then work out from there.
mm-hmm.
Like, can I do X to Y? Like if you need to do X to Z, that's great, but like make sure you can do X to Y first.
Hmm.
Then you can try and solve for Y to Z. But I think a lot of people like it's very easy to be like, let's do this really complex thing out the gate, and then you just have a shit ton of technical debt because like it doesn't work after you make one change, now the whole thing falls apart. I'm living that life. We decided to change how we do all our deals. Like we're changing deal types from being like a way to like we're now I mean we're making a better change, which is like we're using line items. Like the line instead of trying to use deal types to determine things, we're not using line items, which is like
Ooh,
duh.
yeah,
But um that change though, like now I have to think about okay, this change is positive for us, but now there's a negative effect on our previous data. So how am I going to account for that so
Hmm.
that like it doesn't I can still pull on this previous data. Like I have to update dashboards so that now that they review line items, not just deals, like that sort of stuff. But I think that's the hardest thing. Like if there's any testament to like document the shit out of everything, it's that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And, and that speaks to just two good practice things to keep in mind when you're doing anything. Number one, what we've already harped on like crazy. Just segment your operation, like your operations. And operations in this context is basically when you're trying to get from point A to point B. Don't worry about getting to point C, just step at a time it, and then just make sure that it's um, like boiled down into point number two, which is just documenting. Here's what it does. Like, here's what A to B does. Here's what B to C does. Here's how they work together, and here's how to use it. Do that. Repeat, and theoretically, it'll it's not going to fix all of these problems that we're talking about, but it at least gives anyone else who might be trying to look at it transparency into the logic behind it. So
Yeah.
that's kind of
Documentation.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, that was a lovely tangent that we all needed. Because
Yes.
even before we went live, we were talking about documentation and tools and how you invest in that. And there's like the software investment and then there's the labor investment. And we all know it's essential and we all want to leave ourselves breadcrumbs for why we did something weird so that we could
Mm-hmm.
reverse engineer ourselves later.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the investment to do that up front is so tricky.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are lots of tools to try and make it easier, but even those tools can feel like a negative ROI because it's really difficult to measure all of that. So I don't know how far
Yeah.
we want to go on that tangent, but
I've
it's
had a
very
thought
real.
I've had a thought on that actually that I've been keep forgetting to try, and thank you for bringing it up. And it's basically it's taking advantage of the a combination of multiple tools. So the first one is just something like this, just anything to capture audio, and you just just talk, like explain what it is that you're trying to accomplish in whatever way you want to do it. Take that audio file or like video audio file if you need it, and then feed that into a chat GPT, which has audio processing, and just ask it to basically create a breakdown, a detailed breakdown of what it is that you monologued. Validate that yourself, and then assuming that that is accurate, then you can ask it to do two things. Number one, build me a flowchart that you feed as a mermaid diagram, feed that into Miro, and there you go, you have a visualization. And number two is basically write me like an expanded piece of documentation that you then throw into like Notebook LLM for your internal knowledge base that is now very indexable and very, very reasonable. That's
Could you even just leave it in like a project or a custom GPT
yeah.
that's like, this is your knowledge base now, ask it questions? Because I'm
You
Yeah.
also
could
thinking back when like Scribe first came out and everybody was doing the click through, walk through things or like the video capture that then translated to screenshots and directions. Love that, but it's a very like finite result.
So, yes and no. So, on one hand, yes, that would actually be really, really good. The trade-off to that is that the downside to all of these Gen AI tools right now is that you don't have the ability to change your username and login information. You have to create a new account, which is I have to like that has to be a barrier that is succumbed uh, and like climbed over soon. It needs to be. I'm surprised it hasn't yet. But until that happens, you run the risk of potentially having that historical information lost if you ever change email domains or anything along those lines.
That makes sense.
Which, if you're building the custom bot, theoretically, that's not an issue
Right.
until you leave until you leave and now someone else needs to manage it, but you only have that one person who's the owner of it, and then you run into the same issue, which is why it just makes sense to have it in a multi-party editable knowledge base. But again, that brings us back to our initial question of trying to do an integration stuff and overcomplicating the living hell out of it because all these things are trying to make life simpler, but in fact they're adding complexity.
Yeah.
Use critical thinking, please.
Make HubSpot your internal bot. If only
I know,
HubSpot
right?
had like documentation and that kind of thing.
Um,
That my conversation in Sprocketeer around permission sets and things you can do at different levels sort of went off the rails because everyone was like, pretty soon they're going to charge us for this, and then they're going to charge us for this, and I was like, shh, nobody say this out loud.
I'm
mhm.
waiting for
This
the
is
day
the
that we get to
opposite.
like per record charging.
Yeah, it was like per record, per activity, per API call. I was like, no, 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 no.
You can only
Mhm.
update 10 properties on the free starter pack. If you'd like to update 11 properties per day at a 24-hour period, you need to reach out to like host CRM starter.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
we're not speaking these things out loud. But when it comes to like a knowledge base creation, let's scream that. I'll walk over to Cambridge tomorrow afternoon and
Mhm.
just scream it outside their building.
Oh yeah.
Wait, when you're done that, you're going to scream that you like form submission data and report builder?
Yes. I've been screaming about that for like 2 years. Every single product manager who has seen my name knows that I want form submission data.
My name is
Yes.
Danielle, and I was like form submission data. Like that's how you just introduce yourself now. We should get that on a
Campaign
shirt for
Everyone's
you
slogan.
like,
for
oh, you
inbound.
want your forms, right?
Yep.
We should get that should be your shirt for inbound. We should all
Yeah.
get like each get a shirt, and like it'll just have like the one thing we really want. Like
I
mine will be
want.
leads as an object. Yours will be like I want form submission, and Brian can just have whatever he wants.
Mine will just be like, I organize your data. My name is Brian, and I want you to have clean data.
Yeah. Oh
No,
man. Well,
but
we've been ranting for 22 minutes now. Should we spare the public and wrap this up?
yeah, yeah. Sometimes we need one of us to bring us back on track, and today that person is Danielle. So
Fine.
Yeah.
Just
until next week,
whatever.
enjoy keeping the fire burning, and yeah, if you have any other thoughts about what's driving you crazy, please let us know, and we would love to bring you on to share about them, and then we can all kind of rant together. So
Yeah, we're fun. Come hang out with us.
theoretically,
Yeah.
but
We're kind of
but
cool.
theoretically. But until next week, take care, everyone.
That was fun. On brand.
That was a yeah, that wound up working out pretty well, and somehow